Lift your skirts. The translator's voice cracks. 52 Japanese women freeze. Some grab each other's hands. Others close their eyes. They know what comes next. July 1945. A makeshift POW compound outside Okinawa. The ground is mud and coral dust. The air tastes like diesel and fear. Keiko's knees lock. She hasn't eaten in 3 days, hasn't slept in 5. And now American Marines are standing in the doorway, saying the 3 words every Japanese woman was warned about. Shinu made to Takao. Fight until death. That's what Major Yamamoto told them. That's what the cyanide pills were for. But the Marine medic isn't unbuckling anything. He's unrolling bandages. White ones, clean ones. The first clean thing Keiko has seen in months. 52 women captured in 4 days. Youngest, 16. Oldest, 44. These Marines have never processed female POWs before. The handbook says one thing. The reality is this. Dozens of women convinced they're about to be raped, then murdered. Machiko translates again, slower this time. Lift your skirts. The medic, Corporal Davis, 23, from somewhere called Iowa, takes a step forward. His rifle stays on his shoulder. His hands hold gauze and tape, not rope, not chains, gauze. The women were trained for this moment. Every nurse, every civilian volunteer, every factory worker who ended up here was told the same story. Americans are demons. They take women. They take everything. Then they kill. Canvas snaps in the wind outside. The tent smells like antiseptic and iodine. Medical smells, not violent smells. But they can't process this. The propaganda is too deep. The fear is too real. Keiko watches the medic kneel in the mud, his uniform getting filthy. He points at something, not at her body, at her ankles, her legs, the parts wrapped in torn fabric and dried blood. Behind him, another medic, Johnson, 26, with red crosses on both arms, starts laying out syringes, dozens of them. But his movements are clinical, practiced, like he's done this 1,000 times before. The red cross on Davis's armband catches the light. Keiko knows that symbol. She wore one too back when Okinawa had hospitals. Back when she was a nurse, not a prisoner. Back when she believed her commanding officers. Quick question. Comment below. What city are you watching from right now? I want to see how far this story travels. But the American wasn't looking at their bodies. He was staring at their legs. The medic drops to his knees in the mud and points at her ankles. Keiko's mind splits in two. One part remembers Major Yamamoto's briefing 6 weeks ago. His voice sharp as shrapnel. The Americans will violate you. Then they will mutilate you. Then they will display your bodies as warnings. The other part sees Corporal Davis pulling something from his medical kit. Not a knife. Scissors. Small ones. For cutting bandages. Kedamono Gakuru. The beasts are coming. That's what they chanted. During drills, that's what they wrote in final letters home. 38 women were given cyanide pills. 11 already swallowed them when the Marines breached the cave. The rest held them under their tongues, waiting for the right moment. But Davis isn't acting like a beast. He's pointing at the infected cuts on Keiko's legs, speaking slowly to Machiko. The translator's face changes. Confusion replaces terror. He says, show us where it hurts. The words don't compute. Keiko learned basic English at the hospital, but this sentence structure doesn't match what she was taught about Americans. Where's the violence? Where's the savagery? Johnson, the second medic, starts examining another woman's feet. Fumiko, 21, a factory worker from Naha. Her feet are black with infection. She's been walking on them for 3 weeks since the factory bombing. The medic's face goes pale when he sees the damage. In the Imperial Army, infected wounds meant abandonment. If you couldn't march, you were left behind. If you couldn't work, you didn't eat. That was honor. That was Bushido. Mud squelches as more Marines enter. Not combat troops, medical corps. They carry stretchers, supplies, boxes marked with red crosses. One drops a crate, and glass vials spill out. Medicine? Actual medicine. More than Keiko saw in 6 months at the field hospital. The smell hits her. Not blood and gangrene, but alcohol swabs and iodine. Cleaning supplies. Healing supplies. Her breathing speeds up. This doesn't match anything she was told. Major Yamamoto had shown them pictures. Captured women. Dead women. This is what Americans do, he said. This is why you fight until death. But Davis is unwrapping Keiko's makeshift bandage with the same careful movements she once used on wounded soldiers. Professional. Gentle. When he sees the shrapnel wounds underneath, he doesn't recoil. He calls for supplies. Then Machiko translates 5 words that make no sense. Show us where it hurts. Syringes. Dozens of them, but not for what they feared. Lieutenant Morrison, 35, U.S. Navy doctor, holds one up to the light. Clear liquid inside. He speaks to Machiko, who struggles with medical terms she's never translated before. Penicillin, she finally manages. For infection. Penicillin. Keiko knows that word. The miracle drug. The one Japan couldn't produce. The one that would have saved hundreds at her hospital. Now Americans are preparing doses for enemy prisoners. 91% of them have untreated infections. The medics document everything. Wound depth, infection stage, fever levels. Average weight, 79 pounds. 8 active tuberculosis cases detected in the first hour. These statistics would mean mass graves in Japanese field hospitals. Here, they mean immediate treatment. Uso da, uso nichigai nai. It's a lie. It must be a lie. That's what Fumiko keeps repeating as they check her burns. The factory explosion left patterns on her arms. She's been hiding them under torn sleeves for weeks. Morrison listens to hearts, checks eyes, examines throats, not searching for hidden weapons, not checking for value. Medical examination, actual medical examination, the kind Keiko used to perform before the supplies ran out, before the doctors fled, before everything collapsed. The alcohol swab is cold against her skin. The stethoscope's metal makes her flinch, not from pain, but from memory. She once owned one. She once used one. Before the bombs, before the caves, before the running. Paper rustles as Davis fills out forms. Medical inspection cards. Each woman gets one. Red crosses printed on white cardstock. Name, number, medical status. Official records. Evidence they existed. Evidence someone checked. Evidence someone cared. Machiko's voice shakes, translating the next part. Anyone requiring immediate surgery, raise your hand. Surgery, not execution, not experimentation. Surgery. 6 hands go up slowly. Women who've been hiding wounds so severe they can barely stand. Women who assumed admission meant selection for death. Tomiko, 17, the youngest, has glass embedded so deep the skin grew over it. She's been walking on it since the school bombing. Morrison assigns priorities. Red tags for immediate, yellow for urgent, green for stable. The same triage system Keiko learned in nursing school. The same one the Imperial Army abandoned when supplies ran low. A Marine runs in with news. The surgical tent is ready, sterilized, supplied, waiting. When she lifted her skirt, the medic's face went pale, and he called for surgery. Metal fragments, buried for weeks, turning her leg black. Captain Phillips, 31, the surgeon, cuts away the dead tissue. Keiko watches her own surgery. Local anesthetic only. She refused general. She needs to see this. Needs to witness Americans treating enemies like patients. 41 of 52 had untreated combat wounds. Some walked 20 miles on glass-filled feet. 6 need immediate surgery. The medical tent fills with controlled chaos, the kind Keiko remembers from better days. Organized, efficient, humane. Nays? Teki Nanoni? Nays? Why? We're enemies. Why? Reiko, 24, asks this as they extract shrapnel from her thigh. 3 pieces. Each one could have killed her from infection. Each one ignored for weeks, because admitting weakness meant abandonment. The answer comes from an unexpected source. Corporal Tanaka, Japanese-American second generation, wearing U.S. Marine uniform, translates not just words but concepts. Geneva Convention, international law. All wounded receive treatment, enemy or ally, soldier or civilian, man or woman. Keiko never heard of Geneva Convention. None of them did. The Imperial Army didn't teach international law. They taught death before dishonor. They taught suicide before capture. They taught lies. Pus drains from Tomiko's foot. The smell makes Marines step back. But Phillips continues, working. Glass pieces pile on the surgical tray. 7, 8, 12. Each one carefully extracted. Each wound cleaned and packed. The 17-year-old cries, not from pain but from relief. Iodine burns as they clean decades of propaganda from infected minds. These aren't demons. They're following rules. Rules that protect prisoners. Rules that ensure survival. Rules Japan never mentioned existed. Gauze wraps tight around Keiko's leg. Fresh, white, clean. The last bandage she had was torn from a dead soldier's uniform. This one comes from sealed packages. Sterile, abundant. Another reminder of American resources. But resources don't explain gentleness. Supplies don't explain patience. Phillips operates for 3 straight hours on women he should hate. Women whose country killed his friends. Women who were told to fight him until death. The surgical tent's temperature climbs. Sweat drips. But nobody rushes. Each wound gets proper attention. Each patient gets full treatment. The kind of care Keiko gave before supplies vanished. Before authority collapsed. Before humanity became luxury. Johnson documents everything. Photos for medical records. Evidence of condition upon capture. Protection against accusations. Smart. Professional. Nothing like the chaotic retreat from Okinawa. That's when Keiko started sobbing. Not from pain, but from shame. Geneva Convention. Machiko stops. She doesn't know how to translate it. Major Anderson, 37, pulls out a small book. Red cover, white cross. He flips through pages, pointing at sections. Article 14, medical inspection within 48 hours. Article 15, adequate medical care. Article 16, no discrimination based on race or nationality. Words that might as well be alien language. The Japanese military never mentioned this document existed. 0% of captured nurses knew they had rights. Not privileges, rights. Protected by international agreement. Signed by civilized nations. Followed even in war. Watashi tachi wa sutasareta. We were abandoned. Yoshiko, 29, teacher-turned-nurse, says this quietly. The truth hits harder than shrapnel. Their own command left them ignorant, vulnerable, disposable. Anderson continues reading. Food requirements, shelter standards, male privileges. Each article describes treatment they never imagined possible. Treatment their own army denied them in the final months. Treatment that sounds like fantasy. Machiko's voice trembles, translating. She knows the weight of these words. She knows what they mean. Everything they were told was lies. Every warning, every preparation, every reason to die rather than surrender. Keiko thinks about the cyanide pill she spat out. the one that killed 11 others in the cave. They died believing Americans were demons. They died for propaganda. They died for nothing. Tears run hot down faces. Not from pain, surgeries finished, from rage, from betrayal, from the weight of deception. They were combat nurses. They saved Japanese soldiers. They deserved truth from their command. Anderson brings out another document. Photos, American POW camps, German prisoners playing soccer, Italian prisoners attending church, Japanese prisoners receiving medical care. All dated, all verified, all hidden from Japanese forces. The evidence is overwhelming. Prisoners gaining weight, prisoners writing letters home, prisoners learning trades, living, surviving, thriving. Everything opposite of what Yamamoto promised would happen. Hands clench into fists, not at Americans, at memories, at officers who knew better, at propaganda ministers who crafted lies, at an empire that considered them expendable. Fumiko asks through Machiko, "Did our soldiers follow these rules with your prisoners?" Anderson's silence is answer enough. The contrast burns. American prisoners in Japanese camps, starved, tortured, executed. Japanese prisoners in American camps, fed, treated, protected. Yoshiko breaks the silence. "We were the savages, not you." The words hang heavy. Truth often does. But Anderson doesn't gloat, doesn't agree, just continues explaining their rights. Professional, respectful, following rules even when the enemy didn't. Then Keiko does something unthinkable. She asks the American for help. The Marine removes his helmet, sets down his rifle, and speaks Japanese. "Watashi no obasan wa Hiroshima kara kimashita." My grandmother came from Hiroshima. Corporal Tanaka, 25, born in California, drafted at 18. He kneels beside Keiko. Same height now, eye to eye, human to human. 400,000 units of penicillin per patient. Medicine worth more than a year's wages in Japan. Now flowing into enemy veins. Keiko feels it cool in her bloodstream. The infection that would have killed her in days begins dying instead. Ningen Rashi. Like humans. Noriko, 30, a midwife with dengue fever, whispers this watching Marines tend to women they should hate. One brings water, another adjusts pillows. Small acts, human acts, impossible acts according to propaganda. The medical tent transforms, no longer a POW processing center, now a field hospital, the kind Keiko once worked in. Before supplies vanished, before doctors fled, before humanity became impossible. Tanaka explains while working. Military code, we treat all wounded, enemy or ally. That's why I enlisted. My parents were in internment camps. I still enlisted, to prove something, to be better. His hands are gentle rewrapping bandages. Professional, trained, like Keiko's once were. The fresh bandage smell fills her lungs. Clean cotton, abundant supplies, everything the Imperial Army couldn't provide. Keiko asks in broken English, "Why?" Because suffering is suffering. Blood is blood. Pain is pain. Nationality doesn't change chemistry. The answer to the loop from Section 4. Not just rules, belief, principle. The opposite of everything she was taught. Davis brings something unexpected. Coffee. Hot, black, real. First hot drink in weeks. The warmth spreads through chest, through limbs, through frozen parts of humanity. Fumiko cries drinking it. Simple kindness breaking something inside. Morrison returns with news. The surgical cases are stable. All 6 will recover. Full recovery. No amputations. Tomiko will walk normally again. Reiko's infection is responding. Modern medicine, actual medicine, applied to enemies. But tomorrow brings harder questions. What happens next? Prison camps, labor camps. The unknown terrifies less than before, but still terrifies. Tanaka translates Morrison's answer. Hospital first, recovery first, then camp, but not what you think, not what you were told. You'll see. The penicillin works, fever breaks, infection retreats, bodies begin healing, minds begin accepting. Maybe survival is possible. Maybe humanity exists even here. Maybe propaganda dies harder than people. But the next morning brought an order nobody expected, especially not the women. You can help us. Colonel Mitchell points at their Red Cross armbands. The field hospital needs nurses, desperately. American wounded, Japanese wounded, Okinawan civilians. Everyone bleeding, everyone suffering. Not enough hands, not enough trained hands. 23 were trained nurses. The colonel knows this, has their records, their real records from captured documents. Keiko, surgical nurse, 3 years experience. Setsuko, operating room specialist. Yoshiko, pediatric training. Uragiramono-ka Ishika, traitor or healer. The question tears through the group. Help enemies, treat Americans, use skills for those who bomb their cities, but also Japanese wounded, their own soldiers, dying from treatable wounds, suffering in the same wards, needing care only they can provide. Japanese speakers who understand injuries, who know the words for pain. 14 volunteer immediately, hands raised before full translation. They're nurses. They see suffering. Politics died with their propaganda beliefs. Healing is healing. Mitchell explains terms. Full rations, clean quarters, Geneva protection. Work equals purpose. Purpose equals humanity. The alternative, refugee camps. Waiting, rotting, watching others die from treatable wounds. Setsuko, 26, hesitates. Her brother died fighting Americans. Her city burned from B-29s. But her hands remember surgery, remember saving lives, remember the oath she took before war twisted everything. The surgical masks feel familiar, tight, sterile, professional, the weight of responsibility returning. Keiko assists her first surgery that afternoon. American soldier, stomach wound, the kind she treated hundreds of times. Her hands remember every movement. Blood has no nationality. Surgical protocol has no accent. Pain sounds the same in every language. The operating room becomes neutral ground, sacred space, where enemies become patients. Tanaka translates between nurses and doctors. Medical terminology bridging. Cultures, chest wound, compound fracture, sepsis, words that matter more than nationality. Words that save lives. Within 3 days, all 23 work in the hospital. Even Setsuko, especially Setsuko. Her brother died fighting. She lives healing. Both enemies and allies. Both Americans and Japanese. Both victors and defeated. The white medical armbands replace torn clothing. New uniforms. Clean, pressed, professional. Not prisoners anymore. Medical staff. Essential personnel, protected under international law they just learned existed. Keiko works 18-hour shifts, by choice, by calling, by need to prove something. Japanese nurses can be professional, can be trusted, can be human. 6 weeks later, the war ends, but their story was just beginning. August 15th, Japan surrenders. The POWs scream, but not in celebration. Lieutenant Harper, 29, brings the news. Radio broadcast. Emperor's voice. First time most Japanese heard it. Mechanical. Broken. Admitting defeat. The unthinkable happened. The divine nation fell. The empire collapsed. Everything they believed shattered with 2 bombs. 200,000 dead from atomic weapons. Cities erased. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Chieko, 22, from Nagasaki, collapses. Her entire family lived near ground zero. Past tense, lived. Ie ga nai, kazoku ga inai. No home, no family. 8 of the 52 POWs came from those cities. 8 women now truly prisoners, not of Americans, but of reality. Nothing to return to. Nobody waiting. Only shadows burned into concrete. Keiko holds Chieko while she sobs. The surgical tent becomes grieving space. American nurses bring coffee, sit quietly, share cigarettes. Nobody celebrates. Victory tastes like ash when you see its cost. The radio continues. Details emerging. Tokyo firebombing. 60 cities destroyed. 3 million Japanese dead. Industry obliterated. Starvation beginning. The homeland they fought for no longer exists. But also, American occupation coming. MacArthur, democracy, rebuilding, words that sound impossible. Enemy becoming administrator, conqueror becoming constructor. More propaganda or possibility. Harper explains options. Repatriation when possible, but ships are few. Priority goes to American wounded. Japanese POWs. Months of waiting, maybe years. Camp life until then. 31. Choose not to return immediately. Not from love of America, from fear of home. Comfort women rumors, rape survivors, traitor accusations, working for enemies. In Japan's shame culture, survival itself brings dishonor. Letters arrive from the camp, other POWs, male soldiers, describing conditions. Food abundant, 3 meals, meat, vegetables, fresh bread. More than Japanese soldiers ate in years, more than civilians eat now. Work programs, English classes, technical training, preparing for occupation economy, building skills for destroyed nation. The camps aren't prisons, they're schools, they're hospitals, they're waiting rooms for an uncertain future. Chieko stops crying, decides she'll stay, train, become a nurse, real nurse, with real skills, for the Japan that will rise from ashes, for the children who survived, for the future that must come. Keiko watches American planes fly overhead, not bombing, dropping supplies, food for starving civilians, medicine for diseases. The same planes that brought death, now bringing life. Radio static clears. Another announcement. Medical personnel needed for occupation. Desperately. Japanese nurses who speak English, who understand both cultures, who can bridge the gap. That's when Keiko makes a decision that would define the rest of her life. 1947. Tokyo. Keiko wears a U.S. Army medical insignia, treating everyone. The hospital serves both populations, American occupation forces, Japanese civilians, former enemies sharing waiting rooms, sharing wards, sharing recovery. Keiko moves between them. Translator, healer, bridge. 127 former POW nurses work in Allied hospitals now. 3,000 Japanese treated monthly. 0 discrimination reported. The women who expected rape became the healers of rapprochement. Kansha shite imasu. We are grateful. Old woman, stomach cancer, speaks to Keiko. Grateful for treatment, for dignity, for American medicine saving Japanese lives. Words impossible 2 years ago. Davis visits, former corporal, now civilian, medical school through GI Bill. He brings medical journals, latest techniques, shares knowledge with former enemies. Professional courtesy transcending war's end. Keiko teaches Akemi, 18, new nurse. Too young for war, old enough for aftermath. Teaches her medical English, surgical protocols, but mostly teaches her humanity transcends uniform color. The medical card from POW inspection sits in Keiko's desk. Yellowed, creased, kept 40 years later. Evidence of the moment everything changed. When lift your skirts meant medical inspection, not sexual assault. When enemies became healers. Stethoscope weight familiar around neck. Morning sun through windows illuminates the ward. Japanese child, appendectomy. American soldier, broken leg. Okinawan elder, diabetes. All equal, all human, all healing. The symbolic object's journey complete. From terror to trust. from propaganda to truth, from enemy to ally. The white medical card proved humanity existed even in war's worst moments. Fumiko works pediatrics. Tomiko, fully healed, assists surgery. Chico runs tuberculosis ward. The women who should have died as enemies live as healers, building the new Japan, one patient at a time. But here's the question. If you expected brutality and received humanity, would you have trusted it? Would you have believed kindness from those you were taught to hate? Comment below. What would break your propaganda? Davis marries a Japanese nurse, not Keiko. Another former POW. Crosses languages, crosses cultures, crosses everything war tried to prevent. Love growing where hate was planted. Keiko never marries, dedicates life to medicine, to healing, to proving daily that humanity transcends nationality, that suffering is universal, that healing is sacred, that enemies are temporary, but medicine is eternal. 3 words nearly broke them. Lift your skirts. But what came after? Medical inspection, not sexual assault. Healing, not harming. Humanity, not horror. Built something propaganda never could. Trust between enemies. Peace through healing. Future through forgiveness.